You ever try to predict your day based on the shapes of things you see in the clouds?
No, but I believe that.
Yeah, you probably.
It's a form of fortune telling.
Especially if it's a funnel cloud. You know?
Yeah. No, that would be that.
Day
Like,
already sucks.
Yeah. Me too.
Oh man.
Don't go back to bed after that.
Yeah, no, for real. Let's chat. What's on your minds is.
So I was thinking fortune telling, kind of like going along the lines with the clouds.
Yeah.
But before I kind of dive into this head first, let's define fortune teller. I'm going to say, it's going to be a person, no dogs. Okay. But a person that maybe.
There's something in the rules that says dogs can't be fortune tellers.
A living entity that seemingly has the ability to perceive the future, or possibly talk to non-physical, communicate with non-physical entities. When I think of fortune teller, I think of something like that. Do we need to refine that anymore? Or is that a good place to start?
Maybe so. Not divination, because it doesn't have to do with like religious ceremonies, right, and stuff like that. So not that versus So I guess that would be, because those I think are usually separate, right?
So let's clarify that a little. So it sounds like prophets are out of the equation. What about scrying?
No, scrying and stuff is fine, but it's just once you start bringing, I guess it's a religious ceremony. You're pulling gods and deities.
Okay.
Christian might be a better, but divination or fortune telling kind of start getting off of the.
Well, they're really
realms.
wiggly. They're really wiggly because a lot of occultists will call tarot reading divination. Sometimes they mean divination is like I'm finding out the inner qualities of the conflict of what's going on, rather than I'm telling the future, which people
from
will
the divine,
Right. Or what's going to happen if I curse the local magistrate. Good idea. There's only one way to find out.
Yes.
Sorry.
Curse a local magistrate.
Yeah, the only way to
this
find
day
out.
and age.
I'd say they're kind of wiggly. I would say though, fortune telling, it's probably to find out I'd say it's probably to find out the future. To find out the future, or to find out the secret details of something going on outside of your immediate knowledge. Is my spouse seeing somebody on the side, or is my side piece seeing somebody on the side?
Yes.
Actually, right? Yeah, probably. But in that case, So I'm gonna say though, is it because if you go back to old school, right? You go to the seer who scans the flight of birds and predicts if a war is going to go well. Well, yeah, there are kinds of gods and things involved in that because they're kind of involved in a lot of that stuff in that model of things, But yeah, Urim and Thummim are things that click into the breastplate of the old Jewish priests, the old Jewish high priests. Probably some kind of dice or lots. So I think if you go back far enough, you can't help but to have gods involved on some level, because just a lot of that stuff was. If you go back further, maybe not gods so much as spirits, but I think it's going to be a little messy, and I think that's the. But I think it's specifically though, finding out secret knowledge, probably of the future, or of an inaccessible present.
Perfect. So we'll use that as our definition as we talk about fortune tellers and fortune telling.
Yeah.
So I can lead us through a very brief history of time with fortune telling.
Let's do it.
As I said, in previous episodes, my history is definitely my weakest link. Human language is a close second. But we'll start with this. So as far as I could tell, it has roots back to China, Egypt, Babylonia, Babylon, rather. Babylon,
yeah.
See comment about language.
Yeah.
So that goes back about 6,000 years. Includes astrology, numerology, divination. In China, there was talk about the Shang dynasty using bone divination. Bazi, I don't remember what that is, but that was included in it. The 4 pillars of destiny, don't remember what that is, but that was included in that as well. It was used for fortune telling, for decision on marriage, business, moving, and nowadays, entertainment as well. Leading up to the 16th century, Shakespeare I don't think he coined the phrase fortune teller, but I think it was the Comedy of Errors, I think is what it was called, talks about the concept, at least, of the fortune tellers. Bobby, you mentioned this before, I think during the Ouija board episode, card will be up there somewhere. Surged during the early 1900s, post World War I, people trying to contact soldiers overseas or fallen soldiers. In Manhattan, there was a district attorney that launched a campaign against professional fortune tellers, citing fraudulent practices and detriment to public morale. And then going to modern times, now, a few years ago, used via palmistry, tarot card reading, crystal ball scrying, tea leaf reading, which I believe is called tasseography, pendulum horoscopes, and I would also add astrology and the Ouija board.
There is still a law on the books in New York that fortune telling is illegal. It has to be for entertainment purposes only. Aside from that one person you're talking about that launched the campaign in like the 20s and 30s, because fortune telling was illegal, they did underground tea rooms, and fortune telling was just something you got on the side. But if people took money for it, that wasn't like tips or it was an included service in like the thing, you would get a thing. And there was actually like sting operations to bust these kinds of things. And so, yeah, so still like, but to this day, it's like they've not removed that law. I don't know how enforced that the NYPD is like going around busting fortune tellers. It's still kind of funny that it's just still sitting there as a potential law to like break.
Often it's a local jerk, jerk that brings it. And it's like there was someone with like the sheriff's department or something out in like Lancaster area, Pennsylvania, and a lady that was running a shop that included tarot readings as big for entertainment only purposes. Didn't matter. They were actually like bringing charges and trying to shut her down. She's still fighting it. I mean, it's been like a couple years.
I'm guessing there's Pennsylvania laws against fortune telling too. I mean,
actually, a lot of places you got to be really careful about how you say it.
I was going to say earlier, just a little nudge there.
Yeah.
Do you think when the jerk is like, all right, we're going to bust this person and they'll never see this coming?
Yeah, darn. Some people say they're not very good at fortune telling for themselves. I think it's yeah. So let's talk about it. How we want to jump into this. We've got the is it real? Does it work? How does it work?
When it comes to the end, when we do our ratings, I think that's what it should be based on. Something like that, right. Like the likelihood of it being real, or we have to tailor the questions a little bit more, but I think kind of in that as opposed to like being scared or whatever.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. The thing that freaks people out the most. This is all, I blame The Exorcist for most of this. So like so many things, Hollywood is to blame. Actually, one of the things that popularized the tarot a lot, there's a James Bond movie. Help me out.
Live and Let Die?
It might have been.
This is when they use the tarot in that.
Yeah.
It's like the death card. And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
But I mean, but the thing is, that person kind of is fraudulent, if I'm not mistaken, because it is like a front for like other criminal stuff, and they mix up a lot of like really that movie has a lot of possible very very problematic stereotypes.
And so also The Exorcist freaks a bunch of people out because you've got this idea. So once you open the doors to demonic possession as a narrative people are talking about, you wind up with this, like, if you ask questions from things, demons come through gates. I wish it were that simple. But yeah, like, because I'll tell you what, I'd mix it up. I'd mix up this world. But that kind of idea of, well, if you ask these cards these questions, you open a gate. If you ask this board a question, you open a gate. Or if you ask the mirror who I'm going to marry, but it's bad because you're going to open a gate. But if you go back before that, actually, like, there are a lot of things at times this kind of thing was probably really common. I mean, people read omens all the time. You know, you break a shoelace and you don't know, you spill your coffee and you know, the third bad thing happens. It's like, oh, it's going to be a day like that. You know, people don't tend to do it in the other way. You know, it's just like, oh, well, this is working out well. It's starting. It's coming. Good luck. Unavoidable good luck. Uh, but yeah, we tend to, and maybe a lot of it is that kind of fear-based, like is something bad going to happen, something horrible's gonna happen, you know?
Our modern conceptions of like fortune telling all fall into these like Victorian parlor. But like you said, it wasn't really about like opening gates and stuff at that point. It was more just like, well, I mean, sometimes it might be talking to the dead, practices of other cultures that were being like imported, into like and played around with higher
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
Tarot cards enter in as with the Mumluk decks that probably came through Egypt, and they were an Islamic game. And the cards before that from China. That was the first place we believe cards themselves came from. But so you get these weird things that like folks in Europe and stuff had never really seen this kind of thing, these Mumluk decks. You'll have like the similar things. I believe they might have had swords and coins and things like that. I can't remember if they were the same suits because you'll see these variety of suits across history and across Europe. Acorns are sometimes a suit. I feel like that's like a German thing. But yeah. So you have these weird things that come in, and they're often associated with. Now I'm going to tick off some of the tarot people because the other stories that there's this sacred book of Thoth came down and then people made it into a game or something. But no, it doesn't seem that way. Well, not to me anyway. It seems like it was a game, and people realized, probably in that omen kind of way, you got a lucky hand. Like things are going well for me. I got an unlucky hand. I can't cover my gambling debt. You know, you could get in some serious trouble. Like this game became very kind of serious, and you're playing it in tavern type places and things like that, where other things you're not supposed to be doing are going on. But that idea of the omen, um, giving you a sense of, hey, can these things tell me about other omens? If they can tell me how the game's going to go and whether I'm going to get money, can I use them for other things? You know, I think that's a lot of the history of magic and fortune telling and things. It's like using stuff for things you're not supposed to use it for things you're not supposed to be able to do with that stuff. And it's using cards that you're not even supposed to be messing with anyway, and then using them to tell the future. You're not supposed to ask the future because only God's supposed to know the future.
But then that kind of goes into the sort of theme of like games becoming these sort of, like to like kind of occult devices. But then there's like obviously the other version, the occult devices start becoming games like the Ouija board. Even like the Magic 8 Ball actually starts from a device that's supposed to be an actual, fortune telling device and turns into a game.
It's interesting how it works, and like the idea of like games as almost this weird kind of demonic technology or something.
Aren't all games demonic technology at some
The good ones, the good ones. If you ever play Arkham Horror, I mean that definitely seems to have its own agendas. One of my favorite means of fortune telling is quite old and actually goes back to China, ancient China. The I Ching, or I believe it's actually pronounced Yi Ching, almost, but I Ching is how I learned it. So the I Ching is, I believe the oldest way of doing it was similar. It was the bone divination type thing. It was with tortoise shells and how they burned in the fire, and they could be interpreted as being yin or yang. I believe also old yin and old yang. And so you wind up with this system of categorizing. You wind up with these lines of broken or solid lines, and they are arranged in a matrix of to create these hexagrams. And you look up the passage in this book. So you look at what's old yang becomes yin, what's old yin becomes yang. They call these things changing lines. And you read these things from this book, and then it tells you the answer to your question. So it's like a weird kind of magic book fortune telling kind of thing, and it's really, really old. And I'll tell you what, for anyone that wants to give it a go, it's creepy, weird. I've had some really accurate readings, strangely, like strangely literal readings from the I Ching. It's worth a go. But again, that's really a really old system. Obviously, astrology goes back really far. And with that, if you actually look at the origins of a lot of the aspects of it, you're probably talking about like spirits that are kind of embedded in it. So if people knew about it, they might be more scared of it if they thought that was a concern, if that was a concern for them. If like the deckhands and things are probably they're spirits, you know, when you go back, you know, again, you're talking about ancient Egypt, you know, but a lot of it, you're still talking about Babylon and things that were imported from all kinds of places and mixed together, and then they grow over time. But before you had light pollution, the stars, people knew the stars. They knew, you know, what was going on, and there's more to astrology than a lot of people give credit. I mean, a lot of people they know you know, your horoscope in the when there's a paper, there's a Sunday paper, and you read your sun sign in the horoscope, and that's actually probably not the way to do it. You should probably go with your rising sign because you're not going to match everybody that was born in that 30-day period. But the idea is like, what was going on in the sky at the time you popped out into the world, and that tells you something about how everything else is going to go. And that idea of everything being connected is a good explanatory model for a lot of systems of fortune telling. Because why the heck do the tortoise shell the way they burn, or the way these cards land, or the particular runes I pull out? Why should any of that have anything to do with the thing out there? And probably because everything's connected, because it tells you something about those connections, because it's kind of like the as above, so below. Sorry. So it's a kind of an overused thing, but like this idea that like things are reflected on Earth that are in the cosmos. So yeah, cool stuff though. I really like it, and I don't think people should be getting arrested for it. But
I don't know.
So do you know what the reason is for them getting arrested? If they're blatantly saying this is for entertainment purposes only, like what is the case for what law are they breaking essentially? Does anyone know?
Well, I mean, I guess like the stuff from the older, you know, I mean, obviously it still has a law, but like the older stuff was basically like if they were taking money like for their services, like that was the whole thing. It was like it's like it was considered to be like, you know, fraudulent if you were like, so if you were like, hey, like I'll read your fortune, give me $10, you know, whatever. like I think I've read this there was like someone that like it was like something about fortune about someone they were going to go on. It was a sting operation or something like by these police officers in like the 20s or whatever, and they were doing this to a bunch of those like tea parlor type places, and someone like said like they were going to go on a trip or whatever, and they asked the woman asked them for 25 cents and she got arrested for that. You know, so it's like, so I mean, I think it's just like the idea is like the relation to like the fortune teller as a con artist to some degree. I mean, I'm sure not everybody who does it thinks that they are, but I think socially, and especially at that time, I mean, even like going back to like, I'm thinking like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was heavily involved in like trying to debunk, you know, a lot of spiritual type practices and things like that.
Harry Houdini as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then there's like, so there's that thing. And I mean, and I think of my earliest like, you know, concept of like what the stereotypical fortune teller is like from like Wizard of Oz, and like what is the wizard like in when he's in the, you know, the real world, the non-Oz world, like he's like a con man. And I mean, technically, even in Oz, he's also a con. You know, it's like so. And you think about the time period that those books were written, and then even when the movie is made, like that's what the fortune teller is. It's like a carnival show con artist. You know, not a person who's like this is part of their cultural practice, like a Romani or something like that, who's actually like it's steeped in like their traditions and things like that. This is like straight up charlatans trying to scam you out of money, like or entertain you out of money, depending how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
It's like
Well,
it's like
I mean, even if you look
it's
at some of the earlier versions of the tarot we have around are Marseille decks. They predate the Rider-Waite-Smith by a long time. This is, for those watching the video, this is Le Bateleur, the juggler. It later becomes the magician by the time you get the Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
He's doing a shell game on the.
Got a shell game on there, so it's kind of it's that same. So even then, hundreds of years ago, do I have a date on this? This particular one was 1760, but this one that this reproduction was from, but it goes back hundreds of years, and there was already that reputation. And like that, probably if you look at, yeah. So I think that it's the con man thing, the trickery thing. There's also like the uppity Christian thing, because like that was still as if we're free from that. But that was a big deal. And then I think now probably because it's really convenient for money laundering, because it's a zero inventory business and you could be selling something else that you're not allowed to sell, like recreational pharmaceuticals or things, or services you're not allowed to sell, other services you're not allowed to sell. So I think so the money laundering thing is probably at least partially in there, but yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird, particularly in the post-Enlightenment. You have this idea that none of this stuff can be real if it can't be tested with the rigor of the scientific method. Okay, but what if I don't know, like if you take somebody that writes symphonies and you strap a bunch of electrodes to their head and you stick them in an empty room and you give them like, under fluorescent lights, and you'd be like, all right, write a symphony. If they can't, it's I'm not inspired. I can't do it under these conditions. Would you conclude that symphonies don't exist? They're not real? Or would you think that, well, when emotions are involved in something, sometimes sticking a bunch of electrodes on people's heads and staring at them like they're a con artist might influence the outcomes, I'm not so sure that it should be a hard and fast conclusion. In fact, I'd reject the idea that everything that should be considered real has to be subjected to the scientific method, because science is not without its problems. It starts with its own assumptions, like sense experience is the only crucial test of the world. It's everything should be verifiable by the 5 human senses or prosthetic devices that amplify or extend those senses. And it's, I think that's some nonsense. Most people have had weird experiences that science can't account for. And
this might be like weird because it might fall outside of the realm of like fortune telling necessarily, but like the scam artist medium type person, and like the idea that like cold readings and stuff can be like almost just as accurate or have the same level of accuracy as like that. But I guess also the scam artist medium also similar is like the scam artist faith healer or preacher or like something. So it might fall outside of that of our defined realm. But like but that kind of like, but those it's like that kind of stuff is like the versus like when you can do a cold reading and get practically similar results to people, so that gets like into a weird gray area.
Well, yeah,
it's
well,
like,
and especially like that. I mean, going back to that, like I mean, you can send money to Oral Roberts University, to get your magic or your prayer cloth, which is actually paper. Put her on something that sucks and it'll fix it.
yeah.
But
there's definitely
that's
like,
not illegal though.
Well, it definitely falls into a gray. area of something, I'm sure.
I think those things, those guys have lobbyists.
For hired goons, you know.
Are they different?
Sometimes,
They can be.
I'm sure.
Sometimes they moonlight, you know.
Oh yeah, Dan, what were you guys say? For those,
I don't know, but I'm going to keep moving forward. So,
Okay.
talking about cold readings, and I was going to wait to mention this till later, but I think now is probably a good time to mention this. So let's talk about the positives that could come out of going to see a fortune teller. And let's say that they are in fact they're doing it just for entertainment purposes. Like there's no real skill they have. So we're going to assume this right from the get-go for this example. Okay.
Yeah.
They do a cold reading of some kind, but the person actually gets good information out of it.
Right.
What's the question I want to ask that I want to debate here? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Let's start there. So, for instance, a real example, but not an example. Didn't really happen, but an example. A person decides they want to go see a crystal ball scryer, we'll call them. And the person's looking in the crystal ball and they say, "Oh, I see here that you are very involved with a new avenue in your business or work or something like that." And the person, "Oh yeah, I'm up for a promotion or okay, well, if you keep working hard, like it seems like this will pan out," or something along those lines, where it's like that almost added encouragement to propel the person forward. Okay. Yeah. Good thing or a bad thing? What do you think?
It depends on the outcome, right? and it's the Macbeth problem. I got yelled at this for bringing this. I was talking to people in a theater. You're not supposed to talk about this in a theater.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's Macbeth problem.
See, episode of Cursed Plays and Cursed Theater.
Yes.
Next week.
I mentioned it to them. Yeah, they're like, "Oh, that's Scottish play." I was like, "Oh, Macbeth," and they're like, "You said it again." I'm like, "Oh, darn, I forgot. You're not supposed to say." Yeah, but the Macbeth problem, right? So. Spoiler alert! If you haven't read it, anyway, the Macbeth problem. So,
spoiler for Macbeth.
Yeah,
it doesn't go well. Some might say that it ends in tragedy.
Yeah. So the stumbles upon these witches that give him this idea that if he doesn't,
not the Stygian witches, but close.
Not the Stygian witches. These other witches that are just hanging out. Yeah. That if he does in the is it the Duke he has to do in the Duke, that he will become Duke or whatever. He kills some royal guy, and then he ascends to that thing, and it doesn't go well for him. But like, actually, a lot of it's kind of like, well, if he hadn't acted on it, because they also predict they predict that. You will remain ruler as long as Burnham Wood, until Burnham Wood comes to Dunsinane, which is like, it's not going to happen. But it kind of does happen because a bunch of people chop down the woods and sneak up disguised as trees, to do them in the end. But like, it's him acting on the prophecy that causes that last prophecy to come true. So when you act on something and then so it depends on the outcome. But I often think that like people are often going for confirmation on things. It was something they were going to do anyway, and they, it's like a bit of like a Rorschach, and you're looking like an ink blot. It's like, well, what are you projecting onto it? And that's kind of what a lot of people say. Well, there's nothing really going on. It's just a Rorschach. You're just projecting onto this the way like you would onto a cold reading or whatever. You're deriving something from this. Now, maybe you're getting good information because it's unearthing things in your unconscious that you've been ignoring or something like that. Or maybe it just confirms what you wanted anyway. But
Dan, given your example, I think that's probably in the realm of fine. The person is going there of their own volition. They know what they're getting involved in, right? The information is just like, if it's like that kind of thing where it's like, there's nothing that the person giving the reading is getting out of it. They're not getting, like whatever, like maybe a repeat customer I don't know, like, you know, if
Right.
that, like,
But
you
is
know,
there something wrong with that? Is that like morally wrong if someone is?
no, yeah, but just yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
I was
Okay.
just gonna say like, but in that sense of like, you know, like they're just and like if they're like, oh yeah, like it seems like you know your new job's going well, and I'm sure if you keep working at it, you might get a promotion or whatever, like you know, whatever. And it's like, and if the person does like, oh well, that's great, I'm gonna work real hard at my job, and then they do get the promotion, it's like, do they just need that extra little bit of encouragement to like put their anxieties behind them? It reminds me of like, and I'm gonna probably butcher this because I'm not gonna know the exact study, but I've heard so many people like talk about it in different things where it's like this idea that like a teacher is told like they pick a student at random, doesn't matter, like you know, it's like grade, generally like grade school I think is the thing, and they're told, this teacher is told this child is super gifted and they like they're not going to seem like it, and they don't, you know, they're going to need like, you know, it's like
Oh, yeah,
and they're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
need encouragement to like come, you know, but like but they've been tested, we know that they're like really gifted, but like they need that extra little push to make sure that, and like the kid generally isn't, and the teacher treats them that way, and when the teacher treats them that way, the kid generally excels, you know. And it's like this like kind of idea that like, well, you know, what is that happening, you know, it's like I mean, that kind of, I feel like your example kind of reminds me like more of that kind of thing, like, you know, it's like they just need the encouragement to like do the thing that then causes the outcome, you know, versus that, you know. And it's like, and I don't think it's like, and it's, you know, I don't think like, and if the person kind of knows going into it, like, I mean, in the case of that teacher thing, they weren't really like, this kid was prophesized to be something, but you know, but it still has a prophetic element, like this person is going to be exceptional if they're given the right things, and it's like, which means that like everyone's exceptional if they're given the right things.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's no
Well,
such thing as exceptional. Exceptional is what is crafted into
right.
a thing. Yeah, granted, there might be some things that give different advantages, but like if people are just provided with the advantage, they will do all people can do well, you know. So it's like, I kind of feel like it falls more in that
Yeah.
realm than like
Well,
be like, give me half of your fortune when you get it, you know. It's like, you know,
right.
kind of thing.
Well, so commenting on that, it's a thing known as the Pygmalion Effect, and it's actually even less overt than that. It's they tell the teachers that these students are gifted, but not to treat them differently.
Okay.
But the teachers unconsciously do treat them as if they're gifted, and therefore those students wind up doing better, you know, because but they were actually just average students. That's at least the how the and so yeah, I mean, so in that sense, it's like it's even something that's less conscious and more unconscious, you know. Um, I mean, okay, let's take a different one, right? Your bicycle is in the basement of the Alamo, right? But it's not, because there is no basement in the Alamo. Pee-wee, right? Pee-wee goes on his adventure to find his bike in the basement of the Alamo. There is no basement in the Alamo, but he does find his bike. That woman was a straight up that was a straight up con artist. She's practically like Kaiser Sozeing it, like you know, just like picking stuff around, you know, to say where it is. And so it's like, well, but he got his bike. So she did lie to him and did scam him, and he got his bike in the end. Not where he thought it was, but like, so yeah. When it comes to, I think ethics are a difficult thing to pin down. This is coming from a philosophy major. Ethics are a difficult thing to pin down because you have to deal with like, is it the outcome or the intention that makes the thing ethical? There's more, but who cares? The idea is like, did she purposely try to scam you and do whatever? In this example, is because there's a female fortune teller in that, or was it unintentional? Like, what if a reader believes in what they're doing? Is it, and it winds up causing you bad stuff because you acted on it? Was it an evil thing? You know, like it's kind of like, is it the outcome? Is it the intention? Is it the act itself because you're dealing with demons and they're bad? What is it? I mean, Okay, like I'll weigh on it. I don't think this is a moral. I don't think there's a moral question about it. But now, some would say I've got too flexible in morality. I think a lot of it depends on what camp you're standing in. I think if you ask a deck of cards what your future is going to be, and you consider that evil, but Urim and Thummim, the Jewish high priests, and the devices of Urim and Thummim, well, we're asking God, so it's different. Well, is it? Like I had a night shift job many years ago, working at Walmart, and I had very interesting folks on my night shift, and one of them, and there are a lot of Christians on that night shift. I was not in with that, but they're reading these tarot cards, but they're not tarot cards. They're oracle cards. They're angel cards. Okay. So if there are angels on there, which actually Rider-Waite Smith does have his angel things going on. But if there are angels on there, well, then it's not bad. You know, that's just silly reasoning. You know, because actually, like, angel magic can get into all kinds of dicey stuff. You know, that's because you're involving angels. Biblical
Biblically
angels are
accurate
scary. Like,
or like
yeah,
some weird or like kind of like Gnostic type things like Archon. Like
archives and things.
yeah, stuff like that. Like these things can get real dicey, very like
Yeah,
weird, like yeah, like just from a.
but I think people think, well, if it's got the right flavor, like if you use the Bible to curse somebody versus you use, I don't know.
Well, maybe we're just
Necronomicon.
I kind of feel like I feel like the like there's a like if you add like I think the a human element of like you were saying, Chris, like a true believer person like who's like
Yeah.
oh, you know wants to, but they're not doing this to scam people. They believe that what they're doing is right. They're doing like some kind of like you know just maybe not like straight up like oracle like I'm going with spirits, but I'm just doing like tarot reading or something along those lines, or like
Yeah.
like scrying or something like yeah, that kind of thing. I think most people who are that, it's not really like a, I don't think there is like a moral judgment because they probably are trying to give the people good advice. I don't think people who believe that kind of stuff think that they would be like doing
Yeah.
something wrong or harmful. Like now, obviously, a person who's intentionally scamming someone, they're clearly doing something wrong or harmful, but they probably also don't believe in what they're doing because if they did, they wouldn't be seeing like I don't someone's like oh yeah I think fortune telling is totally real. I'm going to use it to scam people out of money. Like I feel like that just I feel like almost
It's like
like
extra work.
yeah I feel like it's like a mutually like
Yeah.
and I think like the person who does believe it's real and does believe that they're doing it like whether it is or not like or just taking whether it is or not out of the equation for a minute like that's like I think those people would probably be trying to do like give best advice to the person that they're I don't think that they would be trying to steer someone in a really bad direction like on purpose. It'd be very like odd. Now maybe like supplementing something like going to your tarot reader for like going to therapy when you probably might need that like that might not be the best like like it's like so like changing things out just like kind of like if you need something else that might be more helpful it's a but yeah it's
Going back to like why are these things illegal or why do people try to quash them or whatever? Part of it is the superstition of materialism, you know. Come at me in the comments if you don't like what I said. And,
okay okay like that's it.
yeah. And
Start arguments like
yeah, let's do it. It's an engagement here. I love you people. Yeah, no hostility. It's all fun. So I think part of it's that. I think part of it is also that, like it or not, society wants to function with a bunch of gatekeepers on what's real and true. And so you do have these things of like, I mean, it gets complicated. You've got your experts on everything, and you're not supposed to question those. And I mean, look, you can, but there's this discouragement of going against the grain. And I mean, it doesn't matter. You can be told to be yourself in every childhood cartoon, but as soon as you try to be yourself in your Catholic grade school, because I went to a Catholic grade school, you know, it's you get pushed back in line and be like everybody else. But there's this thing of like, well, you should go to the trusted experts. You should go to therapists and teachers and law enforcement. These are the people that you should go to get your answers. But when you're going to tarot readers and things to get your answers, you're already like outside of a certain system of control. You're already like in this kind of not following the script kind of world, to some extent. Now, it's your bachelorette party and y'all are getting readings because it's just a fun thing to do to see how things are going to go. Whatever, you know, but if you're going to a reader to get some info on what to do with your life, some people would be like, well, that's irresponsible because couched in that, because this stuff isn't real and therapy is real and works and does what, well, it gets a certain outcome. But I think like when you're charting these things, you're already looking for some different outcomes that haven't been provided by the tools that you've been provided. And the unfortunate answer, I think, to this is like, you're on your own. But you know what? You already were on your own. If you decided to believe whoever, whether they called themselves an expert, whether they had other people saying they're an expert, or whether you decided to go to the soothsayer to get them to say some sooths, then you're on your own either way, because your life is you are responsible for your outcomes, within reason. Within reason. I know a lot of people are gonna not like that, but you have to make up your own damn mind about whether this stuff is getting you closer or further from the kind of life you want. But that's my opinion.
I'm not trying to hard push back, but there's like, but there's, you know, some like things where like, you know, like certain disorders, like, you know, like obsessive compulsive disorder where people are, you know, in that magical thinking mode that causes them to get into like, you know, loops and things. It's like, you know, that is like, you know, just it's like it's problematic.
Yeah.
Those things probably need like different types of thing like that aren't like, and I'm not talking like talk therapy or something like that, but like straight up like other things like that where, you know, falling into something that causes like magical thinking things might be a bad solution for someone like that. You know, where like in that case, like, you know, there might be better solutions seeking, you know, a soothsayer type thing.
Right,
You know, for something like that. So like, there probably are
Sure.
is cases where it's like, and then, you know, and that some people might have a problem and they might not even know that that's that's where their problem falls. Like they haven't been, you know, diagnosed or don't know that this is what's causing them this distress, and something like along the lines of any type of thing that is like in that realm, superstition type of things, like is going to cause, you know, could cause further harm to their outcomes in life, you know, like, so that's just a, you know, that's just something to, you know, just to throw in there as caveat to like,
Yeah, I mean,
to,
like
to that kind of thing, you know.
Carl Sagan wrote a book years ago called, many years ago, because of course Carl Sagan's no longer with us. Or are you?
Get out the cards.
Too soon? No, I'm just kidding. I think Carl would think it was funny. The notion of like the book called "The Demon Haunted World: Science as a Light in the Dark," and his thing, because Carl Sagan didn't believe in this stuff, and he and basically the idea was like, look, science frees us from all of these ghosts and goblins, and it gives us something that we can rely on and whatever. And look, for the most part, sure, you know, you're probably not going to get hurt by sticking with the scientifically validated world. But I shake a stick at the notion that that is the limits of reality. And I think actually a lot of people experience things outside of that. Would agree. Now, when it comes to like concluding as far as like various like DSM diagnoses and things like that, that's out of my wheelhouse, you know. And I think you have to do what's making your, I think do what makes your life better. And if you find that obsessing over signs and things like that doesn't make your life better, then stay away from it, and but if somebody that might have otherwise been diagnosed with a DSM condition, I'm just gonna call it that, um, goes to a shamanic healer and experiences relief from the suffering that they were experiencing or the problematic behavior or whatever, is that okay? Some people would say no, because that's not a real doctor or a real whatever. And I'm just kind of a little bit like, you make up your own mind kind of on it. But I get what you're saying. So I mean, it's a problematic topic, but here we
I thought
are.
this was interesting. So probably about a month or two ago, I guess, I was speaking to this woman, Laura Van Tyne, the spiritual healer, psychic. But when I first met her, exorcist was also attached to that title as well. And one of the neat things that kind of stuck with me that she said, she was like, we didn't always believe in like bacteria, viruses, but they're there. It wasn't until we got the microscope, it was like, that confirmation. And she made that comparison to different stuff that's going on in like the quote unquote spiritual world, that just because we don't have the stuff there to measure, science doesn't have the stuff there to measure it now, doesn't mean it's not there.
Right,
I
right.
thought it was like a very, very interesting remark that she made.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there is that tendency for people to think, well, I'm just gonna call it magic. Magic is just something science hasn't proven yet, but eventually we'll have all these scientific explanations for it. I disagree. I think there's a tendency with magic and magic adjacent things to try to dress themselves up in the explanatory models of the day so they can be respected. But I don't think they function in the same way. And I don't think that you can take one model and explain the whole world with it, whether it's the five human senses or whether it's reason. Because for a long time, there's a debate about whether logic dictated reality, reason dictated reality, or the human experience with the senses is what are. There's a debate about this, empiricism versus rationalism. And we've come out with some kind of mutant, and we pretend that it delivers certainty. No, it doesn't. Science is not deductive. Otherwise, you wouldn't have things like general relativity displacing Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics still works. This is not thought of as true in the same sense anymore. It's practically true. It gets certain outcomes. And so that's kind of the problem with this stuff, is that you kind of have to play around with it. Okay, look, if you're prone to playing around with this, I think you play around with it when the stakes are low. And then you decide what you want to do with it. And if it's not helpful, if it's messing you up, this isn't for you. There are plenty of explanatory models for the world, and you should pick one of those that gets you more of the life you want.
Is weird technological adaptations of the fortune telling person, like even starting with like the like penny arcade fortune telling machines from like the very early 20th century, which are some of the earliest like arcade machines they decided to make fortune tellers who would tell your fortune.
Yeah.
Like, like these like very like over the, like there's the one
Is this like
that
something like you would see in the movie Big, like something like that?
yes, that would be like the Zoltar machine
Yeah.
or whatever is like the like a later like issue version of it. But like they started making them like I think the earliest ones are like 1902 or 1904. Like there was a couple companies that made these. One even had like a record player. I think only one still exists in a museum somewhere. And it's like and they but there was a couple of these and it was like it could actually answer like the record player would play and a tube like where the amplifier was would come up out of and sound like the thing was talking, and it actually had I think separate fortunes for women and men, that was like play, and so it could actually do this kind of interaction versus the ones that would just like say either a predefined script or like didn't talk but like did something and then dropped the card, like, and so there's all these just variation, and then there's even like the fortune telling machines like you would grab and they would tell you, like the kind of electrode type of things, but yeah, and they would so they would often be these kind of like mechanical things, and that's like really weird that like very even like early on when we're starting to make these kinds of weird entertainments that's like we start with that type of thing or those type of things, and they still do exist. I think I mean obviously they were made up until like I want to say like maybe like the 50s or so, like so like the later ones, and you can still find some of them floating around in different places, on like I know the boardwalk near us has some very old like penny arcade machines in the back, and I believe there's in the one arcade, and I believe there's like a fortune telling machine back there, like the whole thing, so yeah, that gives you the cards and the fortune. I don't know, just like, but and then I think, and now like there's like apps that will do tarot readings for you, and there are like, and there's ones that are even like gamified that you can like earn like points and do things like that will get you, like whether it's
Yeah.
like breathing exercise stuff. I don't just think it's just interesting to like that we've like, as we're inventing technology, we're also like tech like inventing technology on mysticism, I mean, like, yes, it's entertainment, like we said before, entertainment type things, but like, I don't know, where do you fall in line? Aside from I mean, those fortune telling machine things are pretty creepy, and that's kind of scary. I don't know if they were as scary to people back in the day, but it's yeah, I don't know. I find them to be kind of unsettling. But probably more so than going to an actual person to tell your fortune. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I don't yeah, just yeah, it's just
Yeah, it's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
odd. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's cool. Okay, so my way in on the digital stuff, like, could it work? I I guess. Um, I don't like it. I don't like it because I don't like digital stuff. I like cards. I like physical things. So some people think that it's like the energy, some kind of psychic energy, some kind of invisible energy, or um, that guides the cards. And so there's the idea of like, don't touch my cards because you'll get your energy on them, or please touch the cards because I want to see what your fate is based on your energy and things like that. Um, I don't really necessarily think that's the case. I actually think it's kind of more. I think it's a ritual. I think it's a ritual. I think it's magic. And you like when you go and you sit down and you start and you do the card sort and things like that. I think when you go into it with the intention of getting an answer, I think a lot of things can provide an answer because I think you could go for a walk and just decide this walk I'm going for an oracular purpose. I'm going to learn some sign to come to me to answer my question and go for a walk and a sign comes to you. I think that's a legitimate-ish approach to getting some intel. But my thing is like, I think a general rule of thumb is you might want to have more than one source of intel. In the same way that if you're running a government, you might have, okay, look, we have the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and like, okay, yeah, all these little intel things, and one might have some information that then gets corroborated by another, and so if you have some corroborated information, that might be something to explore to go in that direction. But again, it's kind of like a rule of thumb. So it's like if I like you'll see these things on like YouTube, it'll be like, if you see this video, it's meant for you, and it's like, well, that's like the big thing of like everything that happens is a sign. And I think that is danger. Going back to like the OCD thing we talked about of I don't think you should interpret everything as a sign all the time. I think that can get a little muddy. But I think you can but under these certain circumstances, it's almost like you bracket off this time where you'll consider these omens to be more significant than you might in other times because we've designated this sort of time as and space as a time and space where this kind of thing can happen. Um,
Well, then what if like taking something like, I guess this again, this is probably falling outside the realm of fortune telling, but like in, if astrology is mostly like systematic, right?
yeah.
What if there's like a computer model system that can take into account many, many more variables than the average person who is just going about doing their own like various charts and stuff like that. Like, that is like that as a technology part, would that be like, like
Yeah.
a different, like, implementation versus say like a fairly accurate boardwalk of
Yeah,
automaton thing, like I don't know.
I think if you go to the automaton,
Right.
you are the reader.
Right.
If you go to an astrologer, the astrologer is the reader. If the astrologer is
An
a
AI.
program or an AI or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, I guess it depends. So the question is, does the human being involved matter, or do these things just tell us things? I'd probably lean in personally. I'd probably lean in the first direction. I think we attribute meaning to things, and yeah, and you'll have astrologers that will disagree on things, so I think it's not an open and shut thing. A lot of it is like kind of now. Could there be an AI that could kind of you could plug in some kind of personality that has a tendency in one direction or another? Yeah, why not? I mean, but yeah, but yeah, like, would it deliver accurate readings? I
So
don't know. Yeah.
I have something interesting to add to this. So
Yeah.
there's a alleged known phenomenon where people get phone calls from the other side,
All right.
allegedly. Okay.
Okay.
And then again, this, for this example, you have to assume that the people telling the stories, they're being truthful. Okay.
Right.
Um, it could be a landline and, they receive a phone call and they recognize the voice. It's all staticky, it's very common. Or people get a message on their answering machine, voicemail, whatever. And it's clearly the person. It was clearly, they've said it was after the person died or whatever. They go to play it back a second time and it's gone. They get text messages from loved ones that have passed on, and then they go to check the message again and it's gone, or something like that. And it's a phenomenon seemingly that like this happens.
Yeah.
And I heard someone talking about this and they were saying like, if, as again, assuming you believe that there are external forces, spirits, whatever, affecting the physical world, then it stands to reason they could probably also affect it at an electronic level or a molecular level, or something like that. They can alter current, they can alter voltage, that sort of thing.
Right.
So going back to what we were saying about, the digital tarot readings, or a system that reads astrology charts and comes up with answers for you, you could stand to reason that like you could still, if you believe that there are external forces providing the answers, they could technically still be providing the answers by manipulating things at a subatomic level or whatever.
Sure.
Interesting thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's like oftentimes in parapsychological studies, investigations, etc., you'll have the random number generator as a factor, and it should be generating random numbers. And yet, when weird stuff happens, it's not so random anymore. And so yeah, I mean there's definitely that. um, I I think it probably could. I personally am just biased because I don't like the digital end of it. But yeah, I mean,
Well, but here you
EVP and
go. Just as a discussion, so what if like talking about your like, and you said like probably because it's the person, but you're saying like, okay, well, it's your state of mind. If you decide to go for a walk, and this is the oracle thing. So if you go to one of the old fortune telling machines and you decide that at this point you're in this, this is
yeah,
meaningful, because there is like a creepiness to it. They're like, if you're making that like the theater of the mind, right? It's like already like in that
yeah,
state. Now, is that the case then? Like where technology could be being used for that thing, but you're the one, I guess, dictating, right, that the space is the,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
spirit versus the machine itself, like doing the
Like,
thing, like
I
it's
think
like,
all of these wind up being questions about metaphysics. And what I mean by that is how you think the world out there works and how you think this stuff works. So if we are animals, merely animals, we have no access to anything outside of our sensory experience. The telepathy isn't real. None of this stuff is real. It's just Rorschach stuff. That's going to give you a totally different read than at the other end, that they're spirits physically manipulating cards, runes, electric current, or whatever. And there's a lot of space in between. And that's kind of that's part of the problem when it comes to talking about this, is like, well, there are lots of mechanisms for how it might be able to work. So depending on which of those metaphysical models you choose to operate in is going to decide like what it is that makes that fortune telling machine do what it does.
So fortune tellers, how do we want to rate these?
I don't know. I don't know how to monster this.
maybe this is the thing. What about this kind of idea? Like let's just take the it's real, it's not real off the table. Let's just say like, and let's like, and maybe also let's take the like con artist bit off the table too. Somebody that can access and tell you the future, is that something you want to have? Because what does that mean? Like, do we want bad news about the future? Do we want good news about the future? Is that something that's scary or comforting or good, or like, just like a monster, like, in that sense? Like, maybe that's a better way to phrase it, like, because then it takes the debate of some of it out of the question. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, like, is that something we want? Like like you're saying, like the Macbeth issue of, do we want that? Like the access to that information, is that like however it comes, if there's a person channeling it or however it is, like, I don't know. That might be the way to go.
So like. Oh, it's so complicated, because it's kind of like, okay, so if you have this fixed future universe, that the future is knowable in a fixed way, then the decisions you make are historically inevitable.
So the going to the fortune teller is historically inevitable, that they would tell you the thing and you would do something about it.
Yeah, and you believe it or not, and you do. So you'd be locked into that Macbeth cycle.
Like a determinism kind of level.
If it's not a fixed future, and you're getting information. If it's not a fixed future, I think whether it is a fixed future or whether it's not a fixed future, I don't think either of those things are scary. I think you should act as though it's a not fixed future, and that it can give you some information and you still have freedom to act. So I don't think it's very scary. I also don't think it's scary if they're. I mean, we've been talking about cards and stuff a lot, but I don't even think it's scary if they're talking to the dead. I think it's all cool. I'm going to give it one monster, because I don't know. I think that's where the scale starts, right? I've never given something 0 monsters. I think I'll give it one monster, because like, there is, I guess, the possibility that on some level it could turn out to be a really freaky seance or something like that. So I'll give it one monster. Other than that, I just love this stuff. I think it's great, and I think. I
guess we never really like defined like the thing of the scale. I mean, you could give it 5 monsters because you think it's great, Like, that's kind of how I was rating. Like, if I go back to like our Headless Horseman episode, I find that particularly scary and stuff like that. Like, is it?
I think we need to stick a pin in this, because I have to go soon. Let
me. I think 1 is more accurate, because if we start comparing different monsters long term.
So I was just like, it's like saying, trying to figure out how to, because it's such a weird thing to define. Yeah. So.
So I'll keep this short, since you got to go soon. I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. I will add to that. If oh shoot, what was I going to say? But what was your question? The one that you framed it, because that's the one I wanted to tackle.
Oh, just like, you know, would you, if you wanted to access like knowledge of,
No, yeah,
say,
that's
the
it. Got it.
future,
Got it.
yeah, like you know,
100%. Because I feel like regardless of what that outcome is, that could give you information that you could give to other people that it might make a difference. So for instance, you know, a lot of my you know, finances, passwords, accounts, all of that is in order to an extent. But if I knew I were going to die tomorrow, I might take some little extra steps to make sure the right people had access to that information. The right people have access to it now, but I might take just a little bit more care just to make sure. So regardless of what the outcome was, I would definitely be interested in information from the future. I think there's something that no matter what it is, no matter what the content is, I think only positive things can be gained from that. I also would give it 1 monster.
yeah, I'm gonna give it 2 because I always think like treading on like weird things with like certainty and uncertainty and like, you know, that kind of like, you know, misses it. And because it's like, it is supposed to be couched in something kind of like spooky to some degree because that's what makes it interesting, right? That's what makes you listen up, right? Like that kind of like, and pay attention. I mean, Chris, you don't think that necessarily, obviously, but it's like, but that's like, I don't think you occupy like a norm, like the, like
I'm weird.
everyday experience. Like, I even think like, yes, the creepy, like, automaton things are weird too. Yeah, like, like it's supposed to be couched, like it is kind of an element of creepiness. So I just want to give it like, so I'll give it a little extra just for that. I don't think there's anything like particularly wrong with doing it at all, but like, yeah, like, but the knowing the, say if you kind of like know the future or an outcome and then make it just even make a different decision, which would alter the, you know, future, forget about the determinism part. It's like, it still would be kind of creepy, like, you know, to be like, don't get on that plane, it's gonna explode, and then the plane does explode. That would be creepy. I would be freaked out. Definitely so creepy. So I'll give it at least a 2 monsters just for the like, there should be some creepy element to like someone telling you the future and something weird happen.
That's not so scary. Well, you know, compared to previous things,
Yeah.
it's not that scary.
I'll add to that, you know, it is scary. Darkened theaters and Macbeth.